Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Samantha, and this is Trans IRL. Tonight we're live with another great guest and some upgraded graphics. A lot of our viewers are turning in on cell phones and tablets, so we've made a few adjustments to make our layouts a little bit better for people watching on smaller screens. And I wanted to thank Stephen for refreshing the graphics this week and for all the work that you're doing over there in the Trans IRL control room.
Thank you. Elbow room.
I know, a little bit more room,
some
right?
more elbow room for those watching on tablets and watching the replays on the bus, on the train, like I used to do way back when. So then it's plenty. So there's more of us. So that's never a bad thing. And thanks everyone on the chat for joining us. We had a lot of requests for more shoulder action. It does have more shoulder action. It's really so thanks everyone for joining us in the chat. I'll be watching that for your questions. This is going to be a fun one.
All right, so as always, Stephen will be monitoring the live chat. So if you have any questions for tonight's guest, please make sure to add them over there. But let's go ahead and get right into tonight's episode. I first met tonight's guest at the 2019 Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference, where she gave the keynote address. She's a stand-up comedian, actress, public speaker, and pastor. Her unique sense of self-confidence and sass makes her one of the strongest voices in the transgender community today. And with that, I'd like to welcome Dina Nina Martinez to the show. Dina, welcome.
So excited to be here.
I know, this is so great that we were able to make this work. It was so great meeting you in Philly last year. It's such a shame that they had to cancel the conference this year.
Yeah, it was a really incredible experience, and that is COVID-19. Nah.
I know.
Yeah. It was
better safe than sorry for all of us.
Oh, for sure. Especially since a lot of us don't have health insurance.
True.
The experience was overwhelming and beautiful, being around so many trans and queer people. Like, I was just like, this is like, wow. And everyone I've met has been so genuine, and we stayed connected pretty well too. And it's just been it was really cool.
It was a really great experience. I'm really looking forward to next year's. I hope that everything stays on schedule for 2021.
Me too.
All right, let's go ahead and get into it here. I wanted to start with you sharing a little bit of your background, a little bit about your family, where you're from, and what it was like growing up.
Oh, wow. That's loaded. So I grew up in Texas in a very small town. I grew up in a very conservative evangelical denomination and environment. I just read an article about my small town, and they were like, they're accepting if you're white and Christian. And I was like, oh, okay. That's kind of true. So it was very interesting. Like, I remember I was always the kid that played with the girls, and they used to always say, he's just artsy, he'll grow out of it, and clearly I did not grow out of it. So I actually went into church, went into full straight on, words are hard, but into church in my 20s, and really spent a lot of time cultivating and trying to pray away the gay, trying not to be who I was. And then my father died, and I was like, and a lot of other things happened, but I was like, I'm done. I need to figure out what's best for me. And so I went on a path, both spiritually, gender and orientation wise, and found me. And it's been probably the best thing I could have ever done.
So let's take a little closer look at some of that then. I really liked your YouTube series that you did, Confessions of a Wannabe Soccer Mom. And if you haven't watched it yet, it's pretty hilarious stories of your experiences growing up. But it's also unique. You talk a lot about how you explored your identity and the issues you faced growing up in a very small town and kind of learning about who you are. And you touched on it a little bit, but I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk through, what it was like being a young kid who knew they felt a certain way, but had a really hard time expressing it or communicating it to the people around them.
I didn't. I think that even if I would have had the words, I wouldn't have felt comfortable or safe expressing those things. I recall a point where there was this counselor we had in junior high, and she was from Dallas, so it was like the big city. And I remember kind of trying to express some of the things that I was going through, and then got freaked out and scared and kind of hid again. So that was really, like, I never really had anyone that I could talk to about it. And then in high school and college, high school mostly, it was just a matter of trying to keep my head above water and stay alive. And I was already kind of the outcast, one of the oddballs. And so I just hung out with about 3 or 4 of the oddballs, and we became an oddball company of weird people. And even in the middle of kind of expressing who I was on some levels, I didn't really have the words around who I was and what I wanted. And then the church really talks that out of you. Don't ask questions. Don't question God. The Bible says it's a sin to be gay. And if you're trans, you're a eunuch and you're still going to hell. Like all these things that I don't believe, obviously, any longer, and I don't buy into that BS. But I mean, it was a struggle. Like, how do you grapple with identity, your creative side, and then this religious institution belief that's saying you're going to die and go to hell, and in hell your skin will burn off and then regenerate and then burn off again forever. Like, so I was scared. I didn't want to. And I say this, I'm in the process of writing my memoirs too, so it's really close to the surface. But like, how do you say, this is who I am, this is who I am? Where is a God that understands and accepts me in that space? So I guess the biggest thing I've grappled with is mostly religion, on top of being who I am, gender and sexual orientation wise.
So you did get involved in the church, though, at a pretty young age, and you were fairly involved in it. I am wondering, though, what did that look like for you as you got older? You got into your 20s. When did you have to finally address your identity and your path, and where did that take you?
It was a lot of praying and crying and praying that God would change me. I remember saying, when I was younger, I remember saying, God, just make me a girl. Let me wake up with girl clothes in the closet. Nobody has to know except you and I. I won't tell a soul. I won't tell anyone you did it. And then in my teens and 20s, it was praying as hard as I can, crying, sobbing, weeping, getting demons cast out of me. And so it was a really painful, sad existence. And I think what really, on top of being really wounded in the church system, my dad died, and then my grandfather died shortly after that, his dad, and I was like, well, shoot, like screw that. Like, I'm tired of living for someone else. And so I started exploring a spiritual path and came out as gay, and I was like, okay, cool, this is fine. But then I was like, there's something not right about me being a gay man. It just does, there's something not quite right about it. And then I was like, oh, now I get it.
It's a big realization, especially when you grow up in an environment where you don't even realize that it's an option, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
think for
for
a lot
sure.
of us, especially for people who transition, or who are older, right? I transitioned in my 30s. For a lot of us, when we were younger, no one talked about this. We didn't really know what options there were. And then when we first heard about trans people, it was almost always in a very negative light and negative understanding.
It was Jonna Steele on A Current Affair. Do you know who she is? Was?
The name rings a bell.
So I was in the throes of Christianity, and Jonna Steele was voted Las Vegas's favorite showgirl one year, right? She had this career as a showgirl in Las Vegas. And then all of a sudden someone outed her and she's on A Current Affair. This showgirl isn't a girl and all that grossness that came with it. But I remember
Right.
seeing that. Oh my God, they're first of all, I remember being very self-righteous and being like, I'm going to pray for him. And then I remember thinking, gosh, this is terrible. And that was the first time that being trans was actually in my mind I'd never heard of it before, and that was the first time.
Yeah, I think for me, gosh. Okay, so my story was a Discovery Channel special that they showed about like transgender people. And I was talking about this with Steven not that long ago. It was something they showed late at night, and it was this like documentary style special on trans people, and it was done like in the late 70s, early 80s. It was so out of date, and the whole thing was about regret. And it's like, oh, perfect. So these people all hate themselves. And that was definitely not the message I needed to hear at that point in understanding who I was. And, at the same time, you had, people on Jerry Springer or the occasional piece on one of those news shows, right? But again, people are always
Mm-hmm.
cast in a very negative light. It's very hard to grow up with those experiences and pull anything positive out of being transgender when that's all you're exposed to.
100%. And in the church, we're told that even though they look happy, they're really miserable. They have demons, you know? And I think one of the things, because I transitioned, I'm old, I'm really old now, um, but I transitioned in my late 30s, and I was still fighting a lot of that spiritual baggage, is what I'll call it. But for about 6 months, every time I turned around, it was like right at the beginning of Logo. So there was a lot of, there were a couple of transgender documentaries, and I was like, oh my God, they're happy and normal, and then all growing, when I did come out for a little bit in the 90s, and then later, God, I'm so old. Like all the people that I saw that were trans were showgirls. And I was a drag performer for a while, and then I was like, okay, well, I don't love this. And that's where Wannabe Soccer Mom came up. It just didn't feel right for me. It didn't vibe with me. And I was like, I just, if I would have had a uterus, I would have a son now playing football back in Texas. And like, at this point, I just want to be I want to be soccer mom. And on top of it, I was like super popular. Like people knew me in West Hollywood, and everybody has an expectation of how you should transition. So a lot of the showgirls were like, oh, well, you just need to live full time now. You just need to just go get your boobs done. Go get this done. And I was like, it is not as easy for me to do that right now. So I had a good year and a half where I had started taking hormones, and before I was comfortable really dressing and wearing the clothes that really suited me. And then it was always heels and skirts, and then I'm this doesn't feel right. So I just want to wear sneakers. And then I found comedy. So I was like, I can wear t-shirts and high tops and no makeup and call it a day.
Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit, though, about your relationships with your parents, your family, your friends, and the church when you finally did come out that you were moving forward with transition, especially having such a conservative family, conservative friends, that background, that history. How did your family, friends, and church treat you when that finally happened?
I was out of the church. I was done. I was like, nope,
Okay.
I'm done. So I went on this spiritual path on my own and found kind of what works for me. As far as my family, so my father died, and I have this story that I've told at the Moth before about one of the first experiences I had. It was very embarrassing. Like, I was drinking way too much. I was, just miserable, and I ended up waking up in this very place about 3 miles from my house and walking home in a towel because I couldn't find my clothes or my keys or anything in Los Angeles. So, and then I was sitting there, and my dad kind of came into the room after he was dead, but like I could smell jet fuel and musk, kind of sweat. And so I sat there in this West Hollywood apartment bawling, and my dad's spirit, ghost, whatever, came into the room and was like, I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, did you just see me walking in a towel 3 miles through Los Angeles and you're saying you're proud of me? And he was like, yeah, I'm really proud of you, and your mom will get it someday. And I was like, I don't believe that. So I spent a lot of time avoiding my mom and most of my family. And over the last, I would say 5 to 6 years, my mom and I have become a lot closer, and she tries to call me by my name. Her boyfriend now calls me by my name, but she's not super consistent, but it's a far cry from what I ever expected. So
Sure.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the comedy side then, because you talked about early in your transition you started doing comedy. You've actually got some of your sets that you've done before on your YouTube page, so you can actually watch some of them. And it's interesting. It's an interesting mix that you use when you're up on stage, because you're sort of in a unique situation where a lot of people who are in the audience may never have talked to a trans person before. So you're up there and you're working sort of educationally at the same time as making people laugh. So how do you balance that when you're on stage?
When I started comedy, it was definitely like, do I talk about my junk? What do I talk about? Right? Like, how do I talk about it? And a lot of my friends were like, don't even talk about being trans. And I'm like, I could do that, but there's something better when I do talk about being trans. And so I started working on material, and then was like, great, okay, I can talk about it. And I noticed that performing at the comedy club or comedy store in LA and performing on the road, that a lot of cis heteronormative people got it when I was talking about it. And I think when I started doing comedy, there were like 3 of us that were trans. I mean, I'm sure that there were a few more, but there were very few comics that were trans. So I had a lot of bad experiences within comedy, but also it's just really empowered me. And I do feel like it's a way to be educational and to show people that we're not just one, trans people aren't just one type of trans. Like they're, like I can get up and talk about my fupa, and I'm not always going to be that glam kind of show girly kind of person.
Oh, it's very real. It's a very real experience. It's you talk about the things that people deal with, dating and life, and it's it's very real. And I think that approaching it that way is great for having disarming an audience, right? You're you're Dina.
Yeah. Unapologetically,
really,
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
That is one of the things that I wanted more than anything, is to just be me. And I love it.
And you've taken your experiences working with comedy, and you've also started doing outreach for the trans community as well, and coaching opportunities. I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I do a lot of diversity, inclusion, and equity work. So I'll work with companies and talk about transgender 101, trans and gender identity 101. And then I do personal coaching and group coaching in a way that is conscious, intuitive, and empowering. So I'll work with people on that spiritual, that woo-woo level, as well as giving them functional tools to empower them so they can not live in fear all the time. And that's kind of where, like, that was one of the things going through the process. It was so scary because I had people that were like, I'm just worried you're going to be a freak. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's great. Wonderful. And honestly, inside, I thought maybe I will be. That's okay. And so if I can help people circumvent the pitfalls of fear and anxiety and move into themselves fully, then that's what I want to do.
Let's talk a little bit more about that as well. Do you currently identify as a Christian?
I am Christo-pagan.
Okay.
So, but I am a multi-interfaith minister.
And I've had the chance to work with some open and inclusive religious organizations here in Phoenix. What I'm curious from you, though, is what do you think the importance of having religious spaces for LGBTQ individuals is? I mean, what are the benefits of having those spaces?
Well, I mean, people that grew up with a spiritual background, that have been wounded so much by it, to be able to come into a place or a spiritual community and be accepted and loved wholeheartedly for everything that you are, I think is transformative. And so I feel like it's super important to have those spaces. We, especially those who come from religious backgrounds, are essentially cut off from usually our family, our spiritual family, and there's not a place for us. So what I'm doing I have just in the process of starting a church called Light of Love Fellowship, and it's currently internet based, so everybody can meet. But it's a space where everyone from all spiritual backgrounds can come in and talk and connect and be part of each other. And having that spiritual community is, like I said, transformative and healing. I just want to heal all those hurties and owies that our community have had from all spiritual paths.
Absolutely. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. For people who grew up in those situations where they did feel that pain and shame, having that home, that spiritual home that they can find where they can feel welcome and included in that conversation, I think is so important, because for a lot of people to lose it, for people who are cast out of churches or other religious organizations, that's a part of them that's missing. It is, and it's a hole to fill in their identity as well. So I think that's great what you're doing with the church. I wish you good luck there. And yeah, I think it's an important conversation. It's something that's not talked about a lot online or even in the trans community in general. Religion is always sort of a tough subject because so many people have been hurt. So I think it's great that you're working to rectify some of that.
Yeah. I think it just helps us find our balance. Like having, whether you call it God, whether you call it a great spirit, whether you call it source energy, having something to hold on to just really is important. And I just know that I was just pissed off. When I left, I was done. I was like, F them. I can't do this anymore. Right. But the things that I missed were connection and community. And there was a space of communal worship that was missing because it's not in the bars. It's there, the bars are fun. I spent a lot of time drinking my woes away. But there's something greater that we can tap into that just gives more purpose and hope and drive. And if you don't need it, cool, that's awesome. But a lot of us want it.
And I think that's the important takeaway there is that for people going through this process, there's no such thing as an easy transition or an easy coming out. So if there's opportunity, if there are people out there who are providing hope, the more options, the better. And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
All right. I also wanted to take a few seconds and talk about, because you're out there in Hollywood, so you get to do all that fun stuff. But you've also been working in your acting career as well. I wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that.
I'm actually in Wisconsin now, but I've lived in LA for a long time. No, I definitely, I've been working on my acting career. I audition a lot in Chicago and I do a lot of self-tapes in Los Angeles. And we're hopefully going to be able to film this movie that I got cast in with Dermot Mulroney. It's called 2 Men and a Pig, and it is supposed to be filming in the spring. God willing, there's no, we have a reprieve, at least a little bit of a reprieve on COVID, so I can make out with Dermot Mulroney. That's all I want. all the fingers crossed.
Well, that's very exciting, though. That's an awesome opportunity, and hopefully there's no major delays here. I know, we're all just sort of waiting around for this virus to settle down. But spring, here's hoping.
Fingers crossed. There's hope.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you've got that to look forward to next year. I did want to give you a chance too. We talked a little bit about hope here tonight, and I think hope is such a great topic. What else are you hopeful for the rest of this year, going into next year, and where do you really see yourself focusing your efforts?
So focus is I am the kind of person who focuses my efforts kind of wherever I can. I like multiple things to keep me busy. So I own a company called Lady Laughs Comedy. I'm working on that. We're doing a lot of virtual stuff. I teach stand-up too. And then there's the church and everything else. So whatever works, I am hopeful that it'll just continue working. And I'm excited to see how we maneuver everything that's happening and hopeful that we'll come out more unified and stronger together at the end. I want to see us being a functional group of humans all across the board.
I'll take it. That's all we can ask for, right? Or, well, maybe it's too much to ask for sometimes. I don't know.
It's, it's a lot to ask for, but I for sure believe that we are moving into a space of higher consciousness, and so I mean, because we're all faced with ourselves now, like all the things that we hate about ourselves, we're the only ones. Well, our roommates and family, you know, those are the people that have to deal with it. But we also have to, like, I'm sick of my family. I'm sick of my roommates. So who am I going to sit with? That's me. And do I like me? Do I really like me? Can I hang out for days on end with just me? And my but I feel like we're all being faced with, like, do we like who we are? Are we feeling like we're getting better? Are we feeling like we're, are we tapping into hope? Are we loving ourselves? Are we loving others? Are we connecting in real ways, even if it's on the internet? And so that's my hope, that we all just get a little bit better and love ourselves more and love each other more.
I like it. I think that's a great answer. It's all we can ask for. All right, I've got one final question for me. I've got one final question, then we'll go over to the viewer questions. But my final question is: so far with your comedy career, you know, what's been your favorite moment so far?
God, there's been so many. Being on stage at LA Pride and James Corden coming on stage and kissing my cheek and nuzzling my neck. It was the best. So that was a really amazing moment. And then every time I do a show in Madison, look, I moved from Los Angeles to Madison, Wisconsin. I never expected to be accepted. I just expected to live here for a little bit and get the heck out, right? And these weird Midwestern people like me and accept me. So every show I do it just fills me with joy. So James Corden, great. Meeting President Clinton, Bill Clinton, it was amazing. But I just love every chance I get to connect with the people in not only this community, but everywhere I get to go.
And that's a beautiful thing. You have that opportunity when you're on stage.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's go over the viewer questions. The viewer chat's been pretty busy here tonight. It's been really, really nice to see some of the comments in there. A lot of people are sharing their experiences with their religious upbringing as well. And honestly, I'm seeing a lot of comments in here where people went through very similar situations to what you faced growing up. So definitely reaching a lot of people out there. The Wisconsin contingency is on here as well. So you'll have some Wisconsin friends. I know. So we'll have to get you in touch with your Wisconsin peeps when this is all over here. But let's go ahead and get into the questions.
Okay.
All right. Our first question here. Comedy is often considered a severely male-dominated field at best and incredibly misogynistic at worst. Okay, good start. Mm-hmm. What is your experiences? What has been your experience where this is concerned, and do you see your visibility and activism combating the stereotype?
Yes on all of that. I absolutely have seen the misogyny, and it is very male dominated. And that is why Lady Laughs Comedy exists. My goal was to create a space where women, queer people are prioritized and visible. So we train, we showcase, and we elevate. And that's why I do what I do. And any chance we can get somebody other than a cis white man on stage, it's my joy.
Mine too. All right, let's take a look at our next question here. Have you ever had a negative experience on stage while delivering a set?
All of my sets have been amazing. I've never Corpus Christi, Texas was the worst experience of my life. I was like, I'm either going to get married or murdered. It's just
Oh
one of
my
those.
gosh.
So, yeah, I mean, stand up, especially when you're queer and you're traveling to places that aren't used to or expecting a queer comedian to come on stage, there's always a chance for something to go awry. But luckily, I've never felt physically unsafe except one time, and I had enough people around me to take care of that. And for the most part, I don't do anything that I know is going to be kind of like, So, yeah.
So you do adjust a little bit if you feel like a joke's not going to fly?
My jokes are my jokes, and I tell my jokes, and I was paid to tell my jokes, sometimes paid to tell my jokes. And if they're not hitting, then I will try to riff and try to adjust. But for the most part, my jokes are my jokes, and you either like them or you don't. And I have a couple of things that I use, techniques that I employ when the audience is getting actively unhappy. And sometimes they'll bring people on. The biggest thing for me is bringing it back to the fact that we're human. We put our legs on, our pants on, we put our legs on the same way each morning, all of us. But like, if I bring it back to making fun of myself, then usually people get back on board. They're like, okay, cool. She's talking about being fat, not having a penis.
Okay.
You're welcome.
There we go. All right. Let's go to our next question here. Moving on. No. It's good. It's a good answer. What's important to know for a trans person trying to get into comedy?
Do it. Every trans person or queer person that can get into comedy, yes, do it. Do it as long as you like it, and for a while after you don't like it, to make sure that it's not just I wanted to quit comedy a million times. Like, I go on stage, I have a crappy show, and then I go on stage and I have another crappy show, and I'm like, why do I even do this, right? But there's always something just around the bend that comes back up and makes you be like, oh, this is why I do this. So do it. Take a class, ladylaughscomedy.com, and then learn from people that, and surround yourself, especially in the beginning, with people that you respect and that value you, and just plug away. It's not easy, but it's amazing.
It looks like a lot of hard work. I've known a couple people who have been in comedy, and it's just, you've got to just put yourself out there, and it's hard work, hard work.
Yeah. If you're not willing to be
All right.
vulnerable and open, it's not the place to be.
Very good advice. Good advice. I think we've got one more question in here. You've worn so many hats through your life. What role has been most fulfilling and most fun?
Gosh, all of them. I love them all. How can I just say one? I think being a creative entrepreneur has been the most rewarding, the toughest, and the most rewarding. Because every time we do a festival, every time I produce a show, every time my stand-up comics that I train get up and do a really amazing job, it just fulfills me. Like, I've one of my students, who, she's obviously a friend now, She moved to the Bay Area and she is just killing it. And she's killing it in the time of COVID, which is just going to make her better. So I would say being a creative entrepreneur, teaching comedy, which also kind of ties into being a pastor, because I sow myself into people. Like I give my knowledge, I give my love, I give my my counsel, for lack of better words. Any chance I can empower someone and help empower them, help them to empower themselves, and help them fulfill a dream. Because everybody's like, I've always wanted to try stand up. I'm so scared. And I'm like, let's do it. This is a good place. Like, that's why I do stand up classes, because we can be in this space where you can tell crappy jokes and then work them out. And then they get up and they're like, that was amazing. And I'm like, I know, right? Yeah.
She'll be back.
I'm like, I can't hear you.
Yep. She'll be back. We lost her mic. We'll be back. She's going to do a little reset. She's going to do a little reset, and it'll be all just fine. And, just thanks everyone for doing the questions. If you have a couple more questions, that would be good. I'm going to do like I did last week. I'm going to ask the next question that a viewer had sent in, and this is actually a really interesting one because you talked about this before. Can you expand on Christo-pagan?
Oh yeah. So my path growing up was Christian. I went super pagan, Wicca kind of, and then as there was a point where I was like, I love this and I love this. I just don't like the crappy parts about the Christian part. So my path is a little magic, it's a little Eastern, Western, Judeo-Christian, pagan. It's a little bit of everything. But my primary, for lack of better words, pantheon is Christian, archangels, Jesus. But then, there are all these amazing deities that I love to employ their teachings. Like, I just have a really strong connection with Jesus, and not like the Jesus of Christianity, but the Jesus of Jesus. So that's kind of where I sit with Christo-pagan. I believe the earth is important and we need to value it and respect it. And I like Jesus. Did that answer it well?
I think so.
That was
a great answer.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, that's
You're
awesome. I don't know. We had microphone issues last week too. I don't know. It's my fault. Blame me. One final thing I wanted to let you do here is how do people get in touch with you? What websites we need to send people to if they're interested in your comedy classes, your coaching, having you come speak at a diversity and inclusive type event? Where do we find Dina?
Yeah. DinaNinaMartinez.com, LadyLaughsComedy.com. The church is on lightoflovefellowship.com. So most everything I do is on DinaNinaMartinez.com. And if you can't find it there, you can go to my social on Facebook at Dina Nina Martinez, and then Instagram at Dina Nina Martinez. And I'm rarely on Twitter, but occasionally on Twitter, Dina N Martinez. So I'm all over.
Yeah, definitely make sure to follow her on YouTube and Instagram. It's well worth it. It makes my Instagram experience a little more fun. I'll say that.
Oh, Chuck. I appreciate it.
Of course. And I appreciate you for joining me here today and answering so many questions and sharing your story. I love how we focus on hope today. I think that was really good. It's what I needed today. I needed some hope
Yeah,
today.
good. We all
So
need it.
thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope to see you again, maybe in Philly next year, maybe at a comedy show if the virus ever goes away.
Amazing. All of that.
That'd be awesome. Normally, this is the part in the show where I talk about our guests next week, but right now I am still trying to book people for August. So I've got a couple people in the hopper, and as soon as we get some times locked in, I will make sure to put some notes up on our Instagram page. So if you're not already following us over on social media, definitely go check us out. Of course, we're on YouTube at TransIRL. So hopefully you're watching us over there. If you are, please go ahead and hit subscribe on there to catch us. We're also on Facebook at TransIRL Show and on Instagram at TransIRL. And Instagram is the best place to get the latest updates on the show. So as soon as we get our guests for August locked in, you will hear about it on Instagram first. We are streaming on Twitch as well. And if you're watching us on Twitch, hello. And don't forget to stick around for the Transgender Show, which starts in about an hour and 15 minutes. We did it.
We did it.
We worked through all the issues and we made it happen.
What an amazing experience. We're done. Unless you have anything else to add before we put this puppy to bed.
No, that was lovely.
Well, thank you again, Dina, for joining us on the show here. Stephen, thank you for your tireless work and keeping things operational when my computer is not operational. And for everyone out there who's watching us and submitted your questions, thank you very much for being a part of the show as well. And as soon as we have a guest lined up for August, or get our August shows lined up, we'll get that posted. So from me, from everyone here at TransIRL, thank you for watching tonight and have a great weekend.